Prime Minister Mark Carney is in New York for a two-day visit to drum up investment in Canada. He's meeting with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and capital managers, hoping to position Canada as a leading destination for new investment, including from the United States. And Mr. Carney used his speech this afternoon to the Economic Club of New York to make a new pitch, one that seemed aimed squarely at the White House.
Canada provides the United States with reliable power, with critical minerals that help fuel American growth. 99% of U.S. natural gas imports, 85% of electricity imports, 60% of crude oil imports. That is mutual strength. Let's be absolutely clear. Canada Strong will help make America great again.
So how is that new line likely to land in Washington? Matthew Holmes is the Executive Vice President and Chief of Public Policy at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and he joins me now. Thanks for being here, Matt. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
So let's start with this pitch from the Prime Minister suggesting that Canada has changed, is changing into a stronger Canada, one that will benefit the United States. What do you think of that line and how it might be received in Washington?
I think it's going to be received really positively. It's a strong signal to Washington that Canada is stepping up. And that means a couple of things. It means Canada is taking a little bit more agency, a little bit more of a firm stance in the world in terms of its own interests and its own economic interests. But ultimately, that should benefit the United States as well. And I think that will be well received. If you just look at a couple of examples as sort of proof points for this, you could look at, for example, defense spending and Arctic security. Over decades, repeated U.S. administrations have called on Canada to meet our NATO obligations, to meet the commitments we had made to our partners around that table. And instead, we've always kind of failed to do that. We've had excuses, or we've had math that suggested that might come eventually, but now we've done it. And putting aside any of the politics and recent sort of noise around this, at the end of the day, a stronger Canada does help create a stronger North America, and that is ultimately in the Americans' interest. And you could make the case for energy as well. We're seeing incredible disruption in the energy markets globally. Europe and Asia are reeling from the price shocks and the supply shocks. And again, a strong Canada that's investing in its energy sector, and that mix of different energy sources makes for a stronger United States and continent as well.
Right, so a push for a stronger, just as integrated, if not more integrated North America. And on that note, the Prime Minister did use his speech to push for some closer cooperation between this country and the U.S. in a few specific areas, including, for example, auto manufacturing, aluminum, critical minerals, some of the same areas when we think about autos and aluminum that have been targeted by the Trump administration. Mr. Carney is now urging the president to see this country as I said, a different Canada, a stronger Canada, a more confident Canada. Obviously, CUSMA talks are on the horizon. So how open do you think the Trump administration might be to actually working more closely with Canada on these files?
Well, it's my hope that they will be. We've long advised the government on behalf of our business members that we need to focus on those 232 tariffs, those tariffs that are on specific sectors: steel, aluminum, auto parts, cabinet making, lumber, and forestry sector. So those are sectors that are being targeted. They're areas of concern for the United States as well. And so we need to hear them out on that. How are they making themselves stronger in those areas, and where can Canada be a trusted partner? So ultimately, the CUSMA review and any negotiations that happen around that from the Canadian side are going to have to deal with these 232 tariffs in those strategic sectors. But at the same time, if you look at America's industrial manufacturing base, if you look at their defense sector, areas that are seen as critical to their economic and national security, so much of those rely on good partnerships with Canada, whether that's the aluminum sector dating all the way back to the Second World War, or whether it's the critical minerals that are needed for advanced technology, for AI data centers, and for drone and fighter jet defense industrial capacity. All of those need the critical minerals that Canada can be a trusted partner in. So I think it's the right message. Now the devil's in the detail. How do we get that negotiation to move forward? What does it look like on the other side of that, those closed doors where those negotiations take place? That's for another day.
You've spoken a few times now about this idea of making, or the importance of making Canada a trusted partner. So on that note, when American CEOs and investors look at Canada right now, with of course all the trade uncertainty and the future of CUSMA still up in the air, but also now concerns about a push for independence in Alberta, in that context, what do they see? How competitive is Canada as a destination for their investment right now?
Well, I think starting from the baseline of what is the current relationship is really important. So there's at the latest figures I saw, there's over 440 billion US invested into Canada. That's about half of the foreign direct investment that comes into Canada. That's the largest share. And so the US is already our largest investor in capital projects, in major infrastructure, in businesses here, and in major projects here. And we are probably among, if not the top, we're probably the top 2 or 3 investors into the American market as well. We invest a lot from our service sector, our financial sector, into their economy and they into ours. So we're already very significant partners at that financial level. And so it makes sense for us to be deepening that and to be looking at that as a first stop, if you will, on the Prime Minister's plan to really attract foreign capital investment into the country. The United States, New York City, great place to start, world center of finance and investment decisions, and right next door for us, and an area that both the Prime Minister and Ambassador Wiseman have serious connections in. They've spent their careers in those halls. Minister Hodgson as well comes from that background, has a lot of deep personal connections and business connections there. And we're building big things in the country again. We're getting infrastructure built. We're getting trade infrastructure, rails and ports invested in. We're getting energy projects launched. We're developing new mines. That's an area where in a very uncertain world, with a lot of questions around how trade flows will move in the coming years, somebody right next door, a trusted partner, doing big things again with a fairly good return on investment, that's the sort of thing New York investors probably want to be talking about.
Mm-hmm. And then just going back quickly on Alberta, the push for independence, is the Chamber concerned about what that could mean for investment in that province?
Yeah, we're very concerned. This looks like grabbing defeat from the jaws of victory to us. Like right at the point, right at the moment, the country is finally galvanized and putting its attention into the economy again and getting things built and getting to Tidewater and talking about trade relationships. We just, out of our own, own volition, we put a cloud on the horizon that says, except there's going to be this uncertainty for the next few months. And then that might lead to more uncertainty. So it's an own goal here that we just don't need to make. And so that's absolutely a concern. It puts an asterisk on any decision moving forward for major capital to say, yeah, but there's still this, there's brackets here. There's a question we need to ask. It just adds to the mix of uncertainty. So it's not a good for that sort of decision making. I don't think it kills these sorts of decisions necessarily, but the more we see that kind of movement, the more we talk about separation within the country, the more we are divided as a country, the worse it is for investment decisions.
And then finally, if Canada does want to attract more private investment, setting aside, of course, the push for independence in Alberta, obviously it's a very competitive global environment. So what are some of the biggest obstacles that are still standing in the way right now of further investment in Canada, and what should Ottawa focus on next?
Well, there's a number of things. If we're talking about bringing investment into the country, then that's about long-term certainty. So is there clarity? Is there the sense that the decisions made by this government are going to continue for the years to come? Or are we going to see other administrations come in, other governments in the future flip-flop or change direction? That was the complaint we heard from many of our business members from the previous 2 governments, that we had a certain direction and then we totally reversed direction and we spent 10 years going in a different way. And now this new Carney-led government is making economic decisions again. And so there's one question from international partners, which is, are you good for this? Are you sticking to your guns? Are you going to stay true to what you've said? So that's one point. The other is the instability in some of our major trade sites. And so we've had historic levels of labor disruption and disruptions at our rails and our ports and our airports over the last number of years. And that has made certain trading partners question, are they reliable? Is Canada the trusted partner we've always thought they were? Because if the trade flows start to move to another port or another airport, it's hard for us to get those back. And so that puts a question mark in. And then the last thing I'd raise is our internal barriers to trade. We have all of these provinces and territories. They don't trade with each other. They trade north to south. And we need to build the infrastructure and the regulatory system that allows us to trade east to west and north. And once we do that, we suddenly become the G7 country we like to tell everybody we are. And we have an economy that's worth investing in at a large scale level.
Yeah, that one certainly seems to be a perennial issue, one I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to talk about, but for now we'll leave it there. Matthew Holmes, Executive Vice President and Chief of Public Policy at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Great to see you. Take care.